Hello, this is Brian Foster, and today we're going to have questions and answers about Spiritism. So, before we begin, I want to go over a little bit of all the different resources and places you can go to learn about Spiritism. So, as you can see from my title page, for those on the podcast, I have pictures of the books of Allan Kardec, the Spirits book, the Mediums book, and the Gospel According to Spiritism. He has other books, Heaven and Hell, and Genesis. But I would say these are the three main books that one would want to read to understand how Allan Kardec codified and received messages from the Spirit of Truth. And then, of course, on the bottom here, I have Spiritism 101, the Third Revelation. Now, I will show you my website now, where you can see this. And let me bring this up. So on my website, nwspiritism.com, and I'll have that link down below in the description, is you can see if you go here and you can actually sign up for this, and you can sign up for this on the where'd I go? Following NW Spiritism. You can sign up there, put your email in, and then you can get emails every time I post something new. And I just post once a day. I don't spam you. Or you can join my my Substack, which I'll get you latest articles too on my Substack page. But if you look at my NW Spiritism, I have it all about near-death experiences, destiny, reincarnation, spiritism, progress, and meetings. I know a lot of people ask about meetings. Let's start from the last first. And I have a link to the Spiritus. Okay, I have a link to. I did. So Spiritus meetings. I have a link to Explore Spiritism. Oh, here it is. Spiritus centers in the U.S. Now, I'm sure if you go to, it's right here. You click on spiritus.us, and you'll go to all the spirit centers in the United States. They're mostly right now. Hopefully, we're growing. They're concentrated more in the bigger cities, but in Florida, Miami area has a lot. So does New York, Boston area. LA has some now. Seattle does. So there's places to go if you're next to one of those cities, and I'm sure they're growing as they go. And if you want to go on and get Allan Kardec's books, on my right-hand navigation page, which you can see here, and I have a picture of Allan Kardec, you can click his picture, and it will take you to the FEB publisher, where you can find a lot of books by Spiritus authors. And there's Genesis, and they're actually less expensive than if you bought them on Amazon. You can buy them on Amazon, but let me see if we can find the Spirits book. They're actually not, for a paperback version for $12.50 for that. Let me see. There's No Solar, which is great. So anyway, look through that. These are all Paul and Stephen, great books. I recommend these books for everyone. So yeah, go to my site, nwspiritism.com, and you will find that. And then you click on his pictures, and they'll take you right to that bookstore. Let me get back to my site. So what I have these areas, and it's all about different articles on near-death experiences, destiny, how predetermination works, how you explore your destiny. And you can see here the future of our planet. All these things you can read. Doesn't cost you anything. And then you also keep going down the right-hand navigation side. I do have where you can subscribe to a YouTube channel, BitChute, Rumble channel, Substack. Listen to us on Spotify, which I upload like this on podcast. And then free PDF books. So Spiritism 101, the Third Revelation, the same book in French. And then The Problem is the Solution in French, which I'm surprised how many people have downloaded that so far. If you ever want to contact me, hit About Me, and you can send me an email, and I have always answered that I know of. And then the other, I have the Spirits book in audio format, free. You can download that for free. And then here's my books. There's 15 books, Spirit Realm, and you can usually see it on Kindle or paperback. And most of them, not all of them, are on audio format. So then if you go here on my YouTube channel, for those who like YouTube's better, this will take you and you can go through a lot of information here. These are my latest downloads. And then I would say the main thing, if you like, is look at the playlist, because I have so many different videos and it really is better for you to look at the playlist. And then here are uh, questions and answers about Spiritism, interpretations of the New Testament, evolution in two worlds, a wanderer in the spirit land, Violets on the Window, which is a whole series of what I did on a book, Gone West, the Spirits book, which I would say if you don't really want to. Now I have the Spirits book on Audible. I'm not on Audible, but in Audible format on my website, nwspiritism.com. Then, of course, you can listen to it. Uh, you can download it for there. And actually, it's in Audible format or MP3 format. And here you can hit each chapter. And then I have one about dreams, current spirit communications, Spiritus musing, Spiritism 101, how to live inner peace through Spiritism. I go through each chapter. Videos with Portuguese captions, near-death experiences, how we are guided by spirits, levels of planets, Spiritism explored and explained, a lot of different questions answered, and Spirits and Spirit Universe, which is another on book, aspects of Spiritism, Heaven and Below videos. You can just have a lot of and then here, let's go view playlist on Spiritism explored and explained. And you'll see I have 70 videos on that. So you can just go through. If a title piques your interest, can humans reincarnate into animals? A lot of this, you can just go through that and see things that interest you and or questions you have had. And of course, now this is why I have Mondays for anybody who have questions. So please ask questions now. I'm ready. I'm just kind of going through this for people who are not familiar. So go through the playlist on my YouTube. You'll see a lot of that spiritual contracts, obsession, how unkind spirits could affect you. It's just a lot of information here. So I hope that helps. Let me hide that. Now, let me go to our questions we're going to talk about today. Let me bring that up. And let me share that screen. And if you have any questions, please let me know and I will get off of that. But I hope that helps, giving you exactly what information we have. There's a lot, and of course, there's a lot of resources and other sites. Look for them. Just type in Spiritism or type in Allan Kardec, and you will encounter a lot of information about Spiritism. Used to be there wasn't much in English, but that has grown just over the last 5 years or so, grown tremendously. Most Spiritists are still kind of the whole Spiritism movement has gone into from starting up really started in France, of course, by Allan Kardec, being codified by Allan Kardec from the Spirit of Truth. But it got its second momentum, I would think, from Brazil, and it's spreading from Brazil. And they have a lot, especially on the FEB website that I showed you that you can link from my site. You can get a lot of wonderful books by Chico Xavier, Yvonne Pierre, and so I would recommend those. They're just Yvonne Pierre, Memoirs of a Suicide, is wonderful. Okay, so I've been going over. If people aren't asking me questions live, I've been going over these questions. So if anyone want to ask me a question, please just type it in, and I will do that. So I'll start with the one that people have asked me before. Will I ever meet my other half? No luck so far. And men and women have asked me this question. and people are lonely. They've kind of gotten older. What they think their past due date is for this, they still haven't found it. People all of different ages have asked me this, and my answer is most probably you have that special person in heaven, but it that special person doesn't always incarnate with you and arrange to meet. Now, let's go the other side. Yes, this happens a lot. I met my other half, and but it was a long and winding road, right? Flew in from Seattle, Washington, and she was living in Rio de Janeiro at the time. So, and somehow the spirit world just had us meet at the right time. You just never know where you're gonna meet that person, and then it just clicks. And then there's a great lecture by Geraldo Neto and Lemos Neto. And he was talking about this family that was in the book 50 years after, which is 50 years after Christ. And this man and woman uh, were husband and wife. And then the story was that this other woman who loved him and her maid plotted to separate him from his wife so this other woman could have him. Well, then what he did is he traced this man and woman, husband and wife, through their subsequent lives. And then finally, they went through like one or two lives. And then finally in the 20th century, they were married again. And in fact, they ran the farm. It was like a government research farm center on which Chico Xavier worked. And the funny thing about this husband and wife, the husband was born into a family. And of course, his father was the same father he had back 50 years after Christ in that book. And this is all true. And his two of his sisters were the woman who tried to take, or actually did take him away from his wife, and the maid. Of course, the spirit world did that so they would learn to love him with brotherly love instead of this passionate love. So you just never know. I mean, so here, this man and woman were, even though people had plotted against them, they were kept being reunited. Now, the other side of the coin is that I have read where a husband and wife were incarnated together, and then after they both came back to heaven, and they were planning their next life, and the husband, of course, wanted to plan his life with the wife, and the wife said, "Well, I've been talking to my spirit mentors, and they think we should incarnate separately. There's some things that I want to work on, so I'm going to be born." They were both born before in Brazil. She said, "My next life is going to be in Washington, D.C. I'm going to be a very poor person." And he goes, "Well, where am I?" He goes, "We've been talking, and I think, and we all think that you've kind of used me, not anything bad or anything, but is that you haven't increased your own spirituality because I've been there to provide that for you." And of course that happens, right? Husbands start leaning on their wife for one thing, wives start leaning on their husband for another thing, which is great working together. There's nothing wrong in that. But the spirit world wants us to work together as we do, but then they also want us to, improve our talent and our experiences in all directions, because we're all one day going to be a pure spirit. And so he said, okay, then he was going to go off and have a life where he was going to have the opportunity to kind of on his own increase his own spirituality. So these things could be happening to you. Now, the third option is that you have grown apart, right? There's no such thing as marriage for life in the spirit world. People don't have to be together. Some people rise faster than others. Some people want to take new opportunities. Everyone loves each other. So there's no arguments when people say, "No, I think it's time for to go on our own way." And there's also stories where people, don't really have a significant other, so to speak, but they have a group of friends. There's another story in one of the books by Reverend G. Val Owen, and I have that in, and I talk about that in my book and what it means. Spirits in the Spirit Universe. A group of 5 women who always want to rise together. So they didn't have a significant other that they wanted to be reincarnated with over and over again. But they had a bond of friendship. And these women, they'd go through life, they'd be incarnated together, and they would be each other's support group. And in fact, this higher spirit was given the task of coming down and talking to these 5 women and seeing if they were ready to ascend from one level to another level as a group. And they didn't want to ascend until they were all ready. So this is how it works in the spirit world. These people are wonderful, they're loyal. And he gave them a test, and he sent each I think he sent like in groups of 2 or 3. And and he sent them out to, okay, go find a child and have the child explain something to me, right? Something like, how we should consider Christ in the spirit world. And then have the child tell me what you taught him. And he could tell by, what the child said, that all these women were ready to ascend together. And he recommended that they ascend together. So here's another bond of friendship. You may have this wonderful best friend who really was meant for you to be friends with and help each other spiritually, physically, be successful on this physical earth, but also grow as a person, be honest, moral, charitable, fraternal person. Because after all, why are we here on earth? We are on earth to improve our character. We're not on earth to accumulate goods, have a big yacht, be famous, be intellectual, great, shining star in the world. That's really whatever, how much intellect we have, it's nothing compared to what we are in the spirit world. So anyway, I hope that does it for for that question. Okay, so I have a question. So there's a lot of answers, right? The spirit world is complex. Okay, let's bring this up here. Show. I'll read the question. My grandpa was at his deathbed. He told someone that he will die the next day around afternoon time, and he did. He died on the day and time he said. I just want to know if that is just intuition. And the answer is no, it was not intuition. He was told that by spirits who were surrounding him. Now, remember when Jesus said, let the dead bury the dead? And it's not, and, you read that and they go, oh, that's interesting. But what really happens, it's funny because once you understand Spiritism and you read the Bible, it's like things that you thought were parables. Some of those things were like absolute statements of fact. So as your grandfather was dying, he had, because he probably was a very nice person, he probably had helpful spirits around him, helping him ease over in the transition from physical life to spirit life. Now, the Leon Denis has told us that the transition from physical life to spirit life is much easier than birth. It's the opposite. And actually, you're going back home. Birth is quite traumatic. And especially when you have, and especially if your grandfather knew he was going to die at a certain date and time, then he was told, and he probably had a very good transition. And so what would happen is he would have spirits around him helping him. And then when the time would come, he would get out of his body and another spirit would cut the paraspiritual cord. And I actually did a whole video on this, which is the silver cord. And that cord is what is attached from your paraspirit to your body. And when you dream, of course, you roam the spirit universe, but that cord is always attached to your body. The length of the cord can be infinite. There's, you can't break that cord. Only if you kill yourself prematurely, that cord still attached to your body, and you have to watch your body decompose, which is pretty sad. But when you die at your appointed time, the cord can be naturally come off, but then you'll have spirits help. And what they'll do is your grandfather probably was when he come up, he's a little woozy, not all the time, and then he'd be taken to some sort of spiritist convalescent center, spiritual convalescence center. If he was, let's say he was Catholic, he'd maybe go to a Catholic convalescent center, Hindu, and Buddhist, whatever. He'd go where other Buddhists were, just to be with his own kind, feel good about it. Later on in heaven, as you ascend in heaven, you understand that there is no such thing as the right religion. We're all one. We all are under the tutelage of Jesus Christ. We all want to be nice to each other and live according to the golden rule. Now, for a pretty well advanced spirit, a spirit as talked about by the spirit Andre Louise in one of the books by Chico Xavier, is this spirit. Andre Louise was part of the team to help him leave his body. And then for his funeral, a couple of days later, the spirit had recovered enough, and Andre Louise accompanied this person to see his own funeral. And in the funeral, there were physical people, and then there were a lot of spirits, all kind of celebrating this guy's return back to the spirit world, which is the real world. And he said, "Well," Andre Louise says, "Well, can I interview you on how you feel after you just died?" He goes, "Sure." He goes, "Well, are you thirsty or hungry?" He goes, "I'm not really thirsty or hungry, because you really don't need that in the spirit world. You drink water, you absorb sunlight for food." He goes, "But if I think that I'm in my physical body, then I get hungry." He goes, "Well, how about pain?" He goes, "Again, if I'm just feel good, that I'm in heaven and I'm a spirit, I feel no pain whatsoever. But if then I kind of go back and I think about my physical body, I feel the aches and pains." So there's something that your grandfather, when he goes to spirit world, he'll leave all that behind. Now, could be some residual of what he feels that he used to feel in the physical world, that it's in his mind, that he will help in these convalescent homes or these spirit hospitals. They will help him say, "No, that's, you can conquer that. You can get that out of your mind." And, people who used to smoke or drink, are addicted to alcohol or some drug, they still feel addicted. They'll be helped if they go to one of the places in heaven that not to fight that addiction. And it's not, there's no physical reason for that addiction. It's mental now at that stage when you're in the spirit world. So most probably, my answer to that question, if your father knew and it was just right on time, he is probably a great person. He was helped, and he said, "Oh, tell your family they're going to die at that date." Now, usually a lot of times what happens, so it'd be interesting to know if this would happen to your grandfather. When a person's at his deathbed and all his family is around the deathbed, is they love that person so much that their thought patterns keep that person tied to the earth. And so what the spirit world will do is they'll make that person like kind of recover, like, "Oh, grandpa's feeling better." And then they go, "Oh, good. Well, it's time for us to go eat. We can rest a little bit. We don't have to be sitting here watching him." And then what they'll do is, as everybody leaves and their mind's on, doing their own thing for a while, which is quite natural, they will then take that person and then let them leave their physical body. So that happens quite a lot. And again, that gets me to the point where when a close family member or someone you love passes away, don't feel regret and say, "I can't live without you. You need to be back here with me," and make them feel bad and make them feel sorry for yourself. You should just say, "I hope you have a great time in heaven. Take your time, rest." Because I've had people ask me, "Well, I've lost my husband a year ago and I haven't heard from him." And you just got to let these people have time, let them recover. It could take that long, especially if they had died in bad shape. It does take a long time in the spirit world for people to recover. But anyway, the main thing is to think positive about them, pray for them, and say, "Oh, I'm so happy you're in heaven." And if if you think the person may not be, is ask for help for that person. So I hope that answered your question. Okay, let me go on to other questions. Okay, let's say right here. Okay, another question I get from people is, can humans reincarnate as animals? And I know some religions says you can. Spiritism says that the answer is no, because you don't regress. And they actually explain why pretty darn well. So when you are a very small little piece of logic, and let me bring that up. So when you're in the spirit world, which is you can look at it as a kind of a magical place where thought is action, or you can look at it as a, a geometrical instance controlled by math, or you can look at it as I kind of look at it, and I think that's why the spirit world had me going to computer science. I see it as a huge universal database with all the information, everything linked together, and you're this piece of logic that flows through all this information, and you perceive what you are allowed to by the parameters that are set for you, and you can perceive it on things on a physical level, or you can see it as a spirit level, depending on how you wish to perceive things. I go into that a lot more in my book, The Spirit Realm. Spiritism has revealed the true reality of our existence. Okay, so let's bring this up. Let me hide this for a second. So, the good reason is this. And this is why spiritism is so great, because there's a lot less fuzziness. I'm not saying there's no fuzziness, because there's no way they're going to tell us everything, because the spirits have told us that only as we get culturally and technologically advanced will they tell us more and more and more. Just like the New Testament, the Old Testament, New Testament, they said you can, take all the messages from there of love and charity and fraternity as eternal, but the other messages were for the people at the time. So there's things that you think that are not positive messages, that are kind of cruel. Those were meant for the people at the time. That's how they learned and understood things. And we'll be getting more and more messages as time goes on. It's dynamic. We grow, the spirit world tells us more. It's like a first grader is told some things, a second grader is told more things, and so on and so on. So get back to reincarnate. If you think people can go back and forth in different animals, then you think that logic, that brain that person has, is a static thing, and what they can control. And it could be somewhat dynamic. But what Spiritism has told us, and we start out as this really little piece of logic, this primitive spirit, and that we could control a rock, or we could control an amoeba or an ant, and that what we're doing is we're training our AI, right, to learn, and we're training our artificial intelligence, which is pretty darn good, and that's us. And I'm not saying anything and making it bad, because we are very complicated, unique, emotion feeling spirits. So God really knew how to make this whole place perfect. But we're learning through our paraspirit how to control primitive groups of cells. We are given more and more advanced groups of cells. So we go from an ant, we go to a lizard, we go to a fish, we go to uh, a squirrel, right? And then maybe we get up to a dog, or a horse, which is pretty advanced. They said, I think horses, dogs, cats, monkeys are the ones closest to us, and they have more free will. So as you go up, and these systems are more complicated, right? The bacteria is a pretty simple thing to control. An ant's a pretty simple thing to control, right? So as you get more and more complicated, your paraspirit learns how to control all the different parts of this body. And So as if you can control the amoeba, you're just controlling one little thing, right? You control a little bit of or a plant, you're controlling chlorophyll in and out. But then as you get more complex, you break it down into subsystems, and that's where you'll have your chakras, the heart chakra, the splenic, the solar, the root chakra, etc. And your body will will control those in more and more complex ways. Therefore, what we are told is that we always progress. We don't regress. And the same thing with our spiritual level. So we so you're not going to go back and be in a cow because that would do you no good. You're not learning anything. If you and a lot of times people will say, well, you're back in an animal because you deserve to be that way. So with the spirit world, if you're like in a spirit who has gone through life after life and haven't learned what you've done, they will they will fashion new trials and tribulations for you to learn what you should be learning. But you may not be back on Earth. They may take you to another planet. And in fact, they may take you to a more primitive planet. Right now on Earth, we are on a planet of atonement, meaning we pay for our past wrongs. And how do we pay for our past wrongs? Well, karma accumulates, and then our next trials and tribulations are analyzed, and we then are given a predetermined set of episodes that will happen to us. Now, that doesn't mean they know what choices we're going to make in our attitude and if we learn in that predetermined set. But just these things, you're going to get married. You may get a divorce. Your business goes broke, right? Your car gets in a wreck. Those type of things will happen. How you treat other people because your marriage broke up. Do you try to treat that other person as honorably as you can, even though they may be extremely mean to you? Those are your choices within that life. Now, as the planet matures and we go to the planet of regeneration, these trials and tribulations won't be so dramatic. They won't be so emotionally draining. They'll be more intellectual experiences. So, for instance, about 6,000 years ago, Jesus Christ wanted the earth to become even more advanced. So what he did is he took people from Capella, who I think were on a planet of regeneration, but they were not learning what they should learn. They were probably taking advantage of other people, and then they were deposited on Earth as a probably budding planet of atonement, which they must have been a shock to them because they went from an advanced world with indoor toilets, right, and all that other great stuff to pretty primitive world where that was out of the question. So, but so that was kind of a throwback. So the idea of where someone who hasn't been this great person, and that you'll see in Buddhism and Hinduism and so forth, uh, does happen, but they don't go back into a lower life form. They go into maybe a different planet, a lower level planet. So that's how that is done. Okay, if there's any other questions, please let me know. Let me cross this one off the list. Oh, what happened? Hold on one second. There we go. Okay. The next one is, do animals reincarnate? And I get that question a lot. I get animals. Do animals have spirits? And of course, as I just discussed, yes, animals have spirits. And in fact, as a quick rendition of that, Chico Xavier was sitting next to a woman. And let me show this question before I forget. I forgot I'm not showing it. Show and stream. There we go. So Chico Xavier was sitting next to this woman, and she had a little dog on her lap. And Chico said, "You know how long you've had that dog?" She goes, "Well, 2, 3 years." He goes, "No, you've had it for over 400 years." I might be saying this story a little bit wrong. And so it goes, that dog's been with you in life after life. And that will happen. there will be this special pet, and I think most of us experience that. There's, like if you've had a dog, and then you had this next dog, and it was just like it just fit you like a glove. It knew what you wanted. It responded to you. It was really your best friend. And then the dog died, and you never had that same experience. But that is because that dog has been with you and knew you. And when you that dog spirit goes back into the spirit world, and if it may be with your friends there, or when you go back in the spirit world, you can be reunited with that dog. And in fact, you can actually kind of peer into its mind. And there was this passage in one of the books where the guy said, they said, "Oh, look into what the dog is thinking." And the dog was thinking of running through the fields, like chasing a bird or something like that. What dogs think. And so dogs are used, animals are used, horses are used in the spirit world. Wild animals are there. They don't. There's no worry about being eaten or attacked because they don't feel the need for that. They'll roam around. And in fact, what Spiritism tells us is that any animal that's on Earth was originally first thought of or been in existence on in some part in the spirit world. Now, they may have small changes because everything has to fit, just like we as humans. There's human like spirits on other planets, but there are going to be changes for us because each planet has its own set of environment, gravity, etc., amount of sunlight, oxygen, carbon dioxide mixture. All that is going to make changes to each human or human like life forms. Now, I have read where there are really strange human like life forms, very big and heavy, or even in the water. So uh, it can get quite of a wide range, but normally it's it's not too far from us. In fact, if you see pictures of aliens, and they always kind of look somewhat like us, even kind of the short ones with the big eyes, it's still you can tell that's a humanoid form, and so that's why so that's pretty well there. So again, so animals have spirits. Animals will come with you. Animals will come back and forth, and those special animals are always with you. If that love comes, in fact, I had one woman said she and her husband were in this apartment, and they were going through some real rough times. And all of a sudden, this stray cat showed up on their door, and they went to everyone in that apartment building, and no one said, "No, we don't have this cat." They tried everyone, and how that cat got in, no one knows. But that cat showed up, and that cat was like their best companion ever. They love, I mean, just with the deep love, they love that cat. And I told them, I said that cat's probably been with you before, and I think her husband was ill at the time, and I think that cat was sent to you at the right time. So these things certainly happen. So next one, unless anyone has other questions, is do I always reincarnate on Earth? And the answer is no. I mean, oh, let me see. Let me another question came up. Let me show that. This is from DB. Do we always have the necessary tools to overcome every circumstance that happened to us, or are we sometimes meant to be victims to end up going through the experience, no matter how negatively it impacts us? So the answer is yes, but so let's break this down because this is an excellent question, as almost all these questions are. Is spirits are told that whatever trial we have, there's always a way out victoriously. Now, is that trial dying of cancer? Cancer? And so you're going to die. How can that be victorious? Well, it can be victorious by as the trial going through death, you transform your character, become more understanding, become more spiritual. And in fact, the spirit world says, don't don't for a moment believe that those last 60 seconds of life aren't important, because sometimes people make the most dramatic transition into a kind, loving person in those last 60 seconds of physical life. So you're never meant to be a victim going through the experience and have it negatively impact you. There maybe the reason it negatively impacts you is because you haven't um, you felt it to be negative and there was no positive experience to get from it. So let me give you an example. I worked for a company and I was in a middle management position. It was bought out, and I got a couple of years salary, which is oh great. Now I invested it. I thought I invested it wisely. I didn't spend it on horses or gambling, but I lost it all. Now I could say at the time I lost it all that experience and it negatively impacted me. It was horrible, and I was all negative, and I just spent months and year regretting it and thinking how stupid I was, and I'll never get that again, etc. But years later, I finally decided, okay, now I understand. And I understand that I don't need that money. I don't need to have extra money. I can live just fine on less. So we may think we're victims and there's no victory, but as we reflect and we reflect of how it's changed our attitude and our character, even though, then it did not negatively impact us. We thought it did at the time, but it did not. So the answer is you have the necessary tools to overcome every circumstance. But do you realize it, and how you analyze that situation is up to you. I'll give you an example of this woman who was living a good life, and she had a wonderful husband. In fact, she said in her account, this is one of accounts of a near-death experience I have it in my book, and she said, but I just wasn't happy. And so I asked God, I'm not happy. So then she was in this terrible automobile accident, ruined her back. She had a good paying job. She lost her job. She was on pain pills. She was miserable. And then she finally said, God, this is even worse than it was before. You've got to make me happy. So then one day, she's feeling at least well enough to go out to eat at a restaurant. She and her husband got in a car, went to the restaurant. She drank too much, right? Because you're in pain, you probably do that. When they got home, her husband said, I better help you walk into the house. She goes, no, I'm fine. She walked along the walkway, hit her head hard on a brick or a stone. He took her to the hospital. Then all of a sudden in the hospital, something happened to her. And she started feeling what people were feeling. She started just welcoming everybody. The staff at the hospital, just like she was magnetized. They just came to her and told her what they felt, what their problems were. And her husband looked at her and goes, well, you never had that effect on people before. And so she had an auto accident. She hit her head. And those are, and taken in isolation, those are horribly negative experiences. But then it changed her completely. And now what she does is she helps other people, and she's much happier. She doesn't make as much money, but she's a much happier person. So I think the hard part of your question to answer is how it negatively impacts us, because you have to look at negatively over time. And in the short run, the answer is probably absolutely. I'm sure it negatively impacts you, but in the long run, you'll see that it does not. And just to kind of carry on with that, is we're not meant to come to Earth and live a life of leisure and to be on the beach and drink our margaritas and be happy all the time. So what would we learn? How would we change our character for the better if we didn't have these stimuli coming in and hitting us? Socrates said, who was a precursor of Jesus, said that no one can think on Earth. There's this 1,000 things you think, and there's thousands of feelings you feel every minute. How, you can't think until you go back to the spirit world. I'm paraphrasing. It's right, because the earth is not a place for us to become intellectual giants. It's a place for pre-planned stimuli to hit us, to cause us deep introspection, and to change our character. The spirit realm says that pain is a great teacher. Now, they don't give us pain because, we like giving people pain, right? Like those prisoner experiences where they hit the dial and torture people, and as they're longer in their experiment, the prison guards give them more pain. No, that doesn't happen. It's there because they love us. They love us like we love our 4-year-old, even though they get into all sorts of trouble because they don't know anything. But they love us. So when we have things that negatively impact us, it is for a reason. It is to change our character and our attitude and to help us grow. I was at a lecture by this one medium and talking about work, and he says he was, and he goes to mediums meetings and he gives messages and he helps other spirits who are in the lower zone, which is a lot of spiritist mediums do. They'll have meetings to help spirits who are on the lower zone, which is from the crust of the earth to the beginning of heaven, and they're kind of lost and need help. Let me get back to what he said. Is he went on this work, right? I mean, he had a weekend off, and so he was at a restaurant and he was thinking, oh, it's so nice just to relax and have this glass of wine and do nothing for a while. And then a voice said in his mind, goes, well, no, you always have to work. So I was just like, no, you're here to work. So in addition to that, I'll tell you the story that Chico Xavier talked to his mother. So his mother had already gone to heaven, and his mother, helped Chico, helped become a spiritist, helped all the way through. He was very talented. The guy was like the saint. But then Chico's sister died, and she was not a spiritist. She was a devout Catholic, and she didn't believe in spiritism. And he asked his mother, he goes, well, how's my sister doing? And Chico said, his mother said, well, she was sent to this nice Catholic, convalescent center. She can be with other Catholics. She's in the spirit world. She's getting better. And he goes, oh, that's great. And his mother said, and I went to visit her. And she goes, Mom, I love it here. People are so nice. And she says to her mother, she goes, and it's wonderful what happens to Catholics. He goes, but what happens to spiritists when they die? And the mother said, well, with spiritists, you have to go to work right away because you know what you're in for. So that's one of the things, like, you once you get into spiritism, you understand that you're not here to lay about. You're here to be intellectually curious, to do things. And now that you understand spiritism and you've read about spiritism, you know that the work doesn't end. When you go back in the spirit world, you have a job to do. And in fact, even when you're dreaming sometimes, you are working on whatever you were working on before. So I hope that it's a long answer to a short question, although, but the question I think needed a long answer. Okay, so I think we're getting close. So I just wanted to, one more, let's have any other questions. Just real quick, just one more reminder that the Spirits book is on PDF. Of course, as I said before, I have it on my playlist on YouTube and other things, but you get it for free. That's how I first found it on PDFs. A wonderful book. And then if the Spirits book, what I would do, everyone's different, right? And everyone learns differently. And everyone has their own way. But what I would do if I had to do over again, I would go and get my free PDF book, Spiritism 101, The Third Revelation. I also have it on paperback and Kindle and Audible. And on Kindle, it's 99 cents, as cheap as I could put it. And it's just 100 pages, and it kind of goes through Spiritism. And I believe for many people, that could actually help you as you read the Spirits book. Maybe not. Then what I would do is I would kind of go through, and this is kind of what I have learned. This is the last book I've done, my 15th book, and it really tells you what the spirit realm is, the physical realm, what you as a spirit, how you grow, how you ascend in heaven. It kind of gives you everything. And it gives you a good grounding of really who and what you are and why you're on earth. And if you want to get down into greater detail, I would, and of course I have all sorts of books, but I would actually read this series of 3 books. Book 1, this Heaven and Below, which talks about heaven, Jesus Christ, the lower zone, etc. And then I would go Spirits, the Spirit Universe, on how you, what you are as a spirit, how you grow as a spirit, how you learn, how you ascend, and what happens when you ascend. You don't just get a piece of paper and say, "Hey, you ascended." No, you get more power, you get more tools in your toolbox, etc. And then the book 3 is how we are guided by spirits, your guardian angel, how all those things help you, how you're the signs and signals. So, and then lastly, if you want to know how to live here on earth and how to ascend on your own way, right? How to prepare yourself mentally to be in heaven, is How to Live Inner Peace Through Spiritism, which is based on a poem by Andre Luis. I think it's 24 stanzas, very short stanzas. And I say what that means, and they build upon one another, what that means, and what, according to what my interpretation it means, and then how to achieve that. And then I have other books, 7 Tenets of Spiritism, which is kind of my my personal journey through of how I found Spiritism and how I saw the signs and signals and what it meant to me. And you can see that here on behind me. Oh, other side. And I have other books like Explore Your Destiny, about your future and planning for your life. The Case for Reincarnation, etc. And of course, then, but so there's a lot of tools, and of course, you can read a lot of this on my site, as I showed you in the first part of this message, this video. So, again, remember, please, I live stream every Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. I will start going over the 1858 Journal of Psychology for Spiritism starting next Sunday, which is a lot of interesting results from mediums and papers from Allan Kardec. On Mondays, I do Q&A. And on Tuesdays, I try and read other books by mediums who from spirits, not necessarily spiritists, but I kind of go through and say, this is what this person said, this is how Spiritism interprets it, and this is what I believe is in concert, or some things that I could slightly disagree with. So anyway, I want to say, everyone, thank you and have a wonderful rest of the day and week.